Are you in the event industry and looking to know how to do cold outreach to land your dream clients? Well, I'm going to share a couple concepts and tips that I always use when I reach out to folks that I have no contact with before, and I'm just trying to make an inroad with a new dream event client. Before we jump into it, I'm Logan Clements. I'm a freelance event producer based in Seattle, Washington, but I execute events all over the world. I do want to remind you to like, subscribe, turn on that little notification bell so you get notified every single Monday when I drop new videos. I'm also the co-host of the Better Events podcast with fellow event pro Mary Davidson. We dive even more into some of these concepts that I talk about here on YouTube, everything from how to be a great stage manager to building your event resume, nailing that interview, some of these things that I'll relate to what I'll talk about today here on YouTube. So listen wherever you listen to podcasts. So this question actually came from one of you who are here on my channel. I don't ever know what to call you in podcast world. We call them listeners here. I don't know if they're just subscribers, I guess, YouTube subscribers. But it was wanting to know what are some key concepts to include in a cold outreach to a client or employer you want to work for. So my number one pro tip for this, because as a freelancer and a solo business owner, I often get a lot of word of mouth referrals, which are great, and I love those, and they kind of do some of that hard work for me. But there is a portion of my clientele that I got through cold outreach. And let's first define cold outreach means you don't know anybody, you don't have any inroad with this company, organization, or role. And so for my number one tip is to make sure that I always reach out to a specific person, not just an info at or kind of like a people list form that you fill out on a website. If I reach out to a specific person, I have drastically increased the likelihood that I'm going to get a response, positive or negative. I'm not saying I have a 100% close rate here with cold outreach, but I have found dramatically that I get better responses when I reach out to a person versus just an info ad email or filling out a form on a website. And so where I like to start usually is on LinkedIn, and I will search for people who work for that organization or that event and try to check out if I have any connections in common who might be able to make an introduction or tell me more about that company. This is the kind of the cool part because a lot of that word of mouth that a lot of that word of mouth that I mentioned, it does, it happens, but some of it also happens. It's like the friend of the friend of the friend passes your name along. And so this is kind of the cool part where I usually am surprised that there might be someone I knew or they moved and they changed jobs, moved careers, and now I have a connection to somebody who works at the organization. But sometimes with cold ones, if I don't have a connection, I will try to send a LinkedIn message or a direct email if I can find their email address. That's if you go to their about page, the team, leadership. Sometimes some organizations and events list those publicly. For the really big events, they usually don't. And that's why I usually try to send a message on LinkedIn. And I make sure I keep it brief. But the three things I try to capture in that little inquiry is I share what I do. I let them know how I found them or maybe why I'm interested in talking to them. And then I ask for a brief phone call. And this is the other part I think is really helpful. I have found that more people are willing to hop on a quick 15, 20-minute phone call versus answering a long email with a ton of questions. And the bonus here is they actually then get to kind of quote unquote meet me because they'll meet me. Usually it's a video call or even a phone call. There is a power in hearing a human's real voice or seeing how they convey themselves on video that can really help you stick in their brain and make a good impression. And that's just also helpful for me. I feel like they get an idea of who I am. And so they're more likely to know if I'm the right fit and or recommend me for things. So here's an example of something I'd written in a cold outreach. It was specifically for a sports gig that I was trying to get. I said, I'm going to call them we're going to say this person's name is Rachel for the purpose of this. But hi, Rachel, I work in sports presentation and came across your profile as I looked into opportunities at the insert sporting event here. I'd love to learn more about your experience working at the part of the organizing committee they did. Let me know if you're open to a brief phone call to chat more. Thanks, Logan. Short, sweet. I got to the point. I shared a little bit of background. I said exactly why I wanted to talk to them. Notice I didn't directly ask for any business. I said I wanted to learn more. Fact finding. This is really helpful. She replied to me same day, and we scheduled a call later that week. It was pretty quick. Even I was surprised. Now, at the end of it, that specific relationship didn't lead to work, but it was an ongoing relationship where she ended up having me send her my resume, and we went back and forth a couple times, and there was actually like a connection built there, which ironically later on somebody else reached out and was like, I see your connections with this person. Can you make the intro? And I had to kind of come clean and be like, I actually met them via LinkedIn and my cold outreach. So I was like, I'm a very loose connection, but I do know this person. Now, before I kind of wrap up, because this is my main key thing for cold outreach, LinkedIn is honestly my best friend. But my bonus tip for you here is spell their name correctly. Double bonus if you get their gender correct as well. As a Logan, that predominantly can be a male's name, I often get emails that say Mr. Logan Clements, and I go, that was just a simple amount of research to figure out the correct gender and or pronouns. A lot of people have those on their LinkedIn now. So make sure you go to their LinkedIn. If you're messaging them on LinkedIn, it looks super lazy if you get their name wrong because it's listed on LinkedIn. So just take your time, reread your message, make sure you spelled their name right, and that'll make sure that you're nice and memorable in all the right ways. Now, before I let you go, I'm going to give a double bonus tip here, but don't be afraid to follow up if you don't hear anything back. So I'm not giving you permission to just bombard this person with emails. I think, though, there's a delicate balance between if you haven't heard anything back, we are all human. There is oftentimes, I've even experienced this, where someone reached out to me and I was just heads down, busy in an event. And I thought I'd get back to them. Maybe I drafted something and just never hit send. And I honestly, genuinely forgot. But there's also times where someone sent me 15 emails in a row. And those are two different scenarios. So I always say if you've sent one email and haven't heard anything back, you can be very cognizant of their time without necessarily being blamey they haven't gotten back. So I'll usually word things like, let me know if you're available in the next week or two. Or if it's a busy season, when's a good time to reach back out? And I'll usually just checking in on this email and put that nice wording in there. And often I will get folks who say, yeah, thank you. It is a busy time. Can you reach back out in the fall? Or I won't know anything until next year. And I will then make a note in my planner that I'll reach back out to them. Now, if you've sent 2 emails, maybe even a third, and you still aren't hearing anything back, I would encourage you to drop it and move on and try to find somebody else that you know at that dream event or dream client. Just because you don't want to be known as that person that bombarded them with a ton of emails and they're not interested. I get a lot of those, not for events, but for people trying to help me with my SEO. And they're very boilerplate and I can tell they copy and paste them. And I never want to respond to them. And I have people who send me so many of these back to back to back that it's almost annoying. So I will say, if you want to make sure that you stand out from the other cold outreach, keep it brief, keep it specific, reach out to a person, and avoid just the general forms and the info at. If you really want to get in the event, it doesn't hurt to do both of those things. But I have found that reaching out to a specific individual has led to much more success with my cold outreach. Well, hopefully that answers your question and helps you get started. I'm Logan Clements. I'm a freelance event producer based in Seattle, and I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you in my next video.